Have you ever looked at a common object in your house and wondered, why was this actually invented? Some of the things we use every day have histories so dark, so bizarre, or so scandalous that you'll never look at them the same way again. From medical torture devices to religious sins, here are 5 everyday objects with shocking origins. Let's start with something terrifying, the chainsaw. Today, it's a tool for lumberjacks and horror movies. But in the year 1780, you wouldn't find it in a forest. You would find it in a delivery room. Before C-sections became safe, doctors faced a nightmare when a baby got stuck. The solution? A procedure called a symphysiotomy. Symphysiotomy, Dinelin Burilum. 2 Scottish doctors invented a small, hand-crank saw with a serrated chain to cut through the mother's pelvic bone and cartilage. It was faster than a knife, but it was just as gruesome. It wasn't until the early 20th century that people realized this bone cutter was actually great for cutting trees. Now, let's move from the hospital to your breakfast table. You probably think cornflakes were created as a healthy, crunchy way to start your morning. But the creator, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, had a much stranger and, frankly, more personal motivation. Kellogg was a deeply religious man and a doctor who believed that flavorful, spicy, or sweet foods led people towards sinful desires. He was obsessed with purity. He developed cornflakes specifically to be as bland and tasteless as possible. Why? Because he believed a plain, boring diet would act as an anti-aphrodisiac. He wanted to help people suppress their earthly pleasures and sexual urges through their breakfast bowl. So, the next time you pour milk over your cereal, remember, it was originally designed to keep your mind off naughty thoughts. Let's move from the kitchen to the closet. High heels are often seen as the ultimate symbol of modern feminine fashion. But for centuries, they were strictly for men, and specifically for warriors. In 10th century Persia, cavalry soldiers wore heels for a very practical reason. When a soldier stood up in his stirrups to shoot an arrow, the heel hooked into the stirrup, giving him perfect balance and stability. It wasn't about style. It was about being a more effective killing machine on the battlefield. When Persian diplomats visited Europe in the 17th century, the aristocrats fell in love with the look. They thought it made them look taller, more powerful, and elite. Eventually, women adopted the trend to look more masculine and assertive, and over time, the gender roles of the high heel completely flipped. What was once a soldier's gear became the height of fashion. Moving on to something you use every single day, the fork. Today, it's a basic tool, but in the 11th century, it was considered a literal scandal and a sin against God. When a Byzantine princess moved to Venice to marry the Doge and brought golden forks with her, the religious authorities were absolutely horrified. At the time, everyone ate with their hands. The local clergy claimed that God had already given us natural forks, our fingers, and using artificial metal tools to touch food was a direct insult to the Creator. The story took a dark turn when the princess died of a mysterious, painful illness shortly after. Instead of showing pity, the famous St. Peter Damian claimed her death was divine punishment for her excessive vanity and her use of the devil's tool. Because of this religious fear, it took hundreds of years for the fork to be accepted as a normal way to eat in Europe. Now let's talk about the necktie. Today, it's the universal symbol of professionalism, weddings, and formal events. But its origins are far from the corporate office. They are rooted in the chaos of war. During the 30 Years' War in the 17th century, Croatian mercenaries were hired by King Louis XIII of France. These soldiers wore traditional, colorful cloths tied around their necks. They weren't just for style. They were practical pieces of their uniform. The French, who were always obsessed with fashion, were so impressed by this look that they immediately adopted it. They called it la cravate, named after the Croats. What started as a piece of military gear for rugged soldiers became the ultimate accessory for gentlemen around the world. From the battlefield to the boardroom, the tie has traveled a long way. Finally, we have the Post-it note. This wasn't a stroke of genius. It was actually a massive failure. In 1968, a scientist named Spencer Silver was trying to create a super strong adhesive for the aerospace industry. Instead, he accidentally created a weak glue that stuck to surfaces but could be pulled off easily without leaving a trace. For years, nobody knew what to do with a glue that didn't stay stuck. It wasn't until a colleague named Art Fry wanted a way to keep bookmarks in his hymn book without damaging the pages that the post was truly born. One man's failure became a multi-billion-dollar success story. The world around us is full of objects with hidden, bizarre, and sometimes dark stories. From surgical chainsaws to anti-aphrodisiac breakfast cereals, history is much stranger than we think. Which one of these surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history of everyday things, hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.